Okay, everybody, we are ready to get started. It is 7:07. Thank you for your patience while we wait for some technical difficulties. I appreciate everyone coming today. I'm going to hop right into our agenda so we can get down to business. So item 1 on our agenda tonight is the approval of agenda. Anybody have any amendments to make to the agenda for tonight? Great. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second? Okay, that's a motion by Sam Wald, a second by John Huss to approve the agenda. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, off to a good start. Okay, second is order of business. So actually, I don't think we need to have both of those, so I'm going to move on from that. So C, communications to the school facility utilization task force. We received one communication to the task force email since we last met. That was an email on March 6th from Holly Carlson asking if security is being taken into account as part of this analysis, I believe from a facilities perspective. So I think I would feel comfortable speaking for the board that we are all reasonably very concerned about school security and understanding what that means from our schools and how we are addressing security right now, as well as what that looks like moving forward should be part of our evaluation criteria. We need to finalize our evaluation criteria. That's something I want to talk about tonight, but that's kind of my answer to that question there. So,
Is it possible to expand on that? Because there's quite a big investment in the past year.
I'm sorry?
There's quite an investment in school security in the past year. We
There-
expand on a portion of that?
I'm not, so I could, but I don't know that it would be the most thorough report from a security perspective. I'm not on the school security subcommittee. I'm also not 100% sure. I know there are things that we don't share about our security measures. So I would look to the board if I can maybe speak a little bit more about that at their next meeting to get a little bit of a roundup there. But it is something we're constantly evaluating. There's a subcommittee on the Board of Education that is dedicated to school safety and security, who's always working with Jeff and the rest of the town to make sure that we are doing what we can to keep our schools secure. That was it for communications. So I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a school facility utilization task force chair's report. So the first update I have is that we did get approval from our local boards for a budget for recordings for these meetings, which I really appreciate. Thank you, Dan Jerem. Thank you, Board of Finance. Thank you for the Board of Ed for helping cover those costs. I have one request for the board for the task force tonight that I would like to discuss to make sure that we can move forward with this, which is we will have staff members here that will be working to support the meetings. And so I would like to discuss perhaps setting an end time for all of the meetings moving forward so that they're not committed to being here all night and we can make sure that people have enough time to get back to their days the next day. So I would entertain a motion for potentially setting an end time for the meetings, if anybody's open to making that.
Motion to discuss end times.
Motion to end no later than 9 o'clock.
That motion.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mary Beth Greenwood to end no later than 9 o'clock, and that's a second from Sam Wald. Any discussion from the rest of the task force?
I have some discussion. I think that we should not be limiting any public comment because this is a mistake that really made everything go awry 10 years ago. When you shut people's comments down and you didn't hear from them, and they were so angry that people probably voted to keep a school open just because they were angry and they didn't want to consider anything and they didn't trust the board that was giving them information. So my vote will be no, not to limit an end time because then you're going to end up limiting public comment.
And I would agree with Lisa. I think an end time would curtail. We're just going to say no, nobody else can speak because we're at 9 o'clock and somebody's got to go home. We're all here and I think within reason we can aim for 9 o'clock, but I think having a set deadline is not the purpose of these meetings.
So I totally understand what you guys are saying, and I would say that some counters to that are one, again, sort of the staffing component here to make sure that we have support here, that it's not extended beyond time. From a public comment perspective, I think I would say the same thing that I have been saying, is that this is a continual process, that people have plenty of opportunity to talk up to the task force. They have opportunity to address us both virtually as well as at subsequent meetings if something is important. I also wanted to speak tonight about perhaps scheduling 1 or 2 additional meetings, either public hearings or something that's more task force oriented where we don't have a ton of business to get through, to kind of help make sure that we can promote those as, hey, these are meetings we're really looking to hear from you guys. I think that when I was looking at the calendar of the task force meetings that we have available, we haven't really discussed how we are going to better solicit community input yet. That's something that we need to sort out, as well as take it back in, as well as, again, have some of those back and forth dialogues that may necessitate other people or like a longer discussion. So I'd love to dedicate some time to some of those topics while still having public meeting available, generally public comment available during these meetings so that people can get quick answers to things, make sure they understand some of the information that's being discussed, but we're not here all night every time that we're meeting to have a big back and forth with everybody.
And just to add to that, and there's such an investment in this study, there's such an investment in this process, and it seems really odd to me that we would be limited with the timing and the communication based on an individual that we're hiring to report it. So maybe we look at a different individual, and maybe we look at something outsourced. I mean, we gave a pretty substantial budget above and beyond what you had asked. It was approved last evening, so it seems like that one thing should not be constraining the format of this meeting.
I mean, speaking for myself, like I also like can't be here for 3 to 4 hours during every meeting. So I do think, I've spoken to a lot of task force members, and they do feel that they also cannot commit to being here that late for every meeting. So maybe we could discuss a later end time, like 9:30 or something like that, to kind of help us get through that, and then see how it goes. And we can always adapt as we go, but that's sort of what my thought process is right now.
And that makes sense. I said 9 o'clock to get the conversation started. I think a couple of things. I absolutely do not want to cut off public comment. I agree with that. But we can, within our agenda, try to set targets of time limits on our part of it to make sure we allow for enough time for public comment. Not that we want to cut any of that either, but in an effort to just stay on task and try to keep things moving, that could help in leaving enough time at the end for public comment. It's very hard to have a hard and fast end time to a meeting, but it's okay. In my mind, I've always had a target. And if we don't end exactly at 9, I wouldn't be upset, but I think it's good to have a target.
And in terms of, there's the resource of to handle things, how long are you able to be doing colleagues able to stay in meetings into the evenings?
We don't really put a time limit on it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that they're not. I appreciate your help.
Usually-
Yeah, and if you have constraints, yeah.
I do like the idea of us adding in times for additional public forum words, literally because one of the things that had come up previously at I think it was our second meeting, about how the timing of our meetings and parents not being able to get there or other people. I had looked throughout the state online to see what different districts in the northwest corner have gone through this process. So Simsbury Schools did this pretty recently, and they had a couple, at least 2 public forum days. So even something like that to be on a weekend to where it's more accessible for some folks too. I think that's something that we should consider in addition to these meetings. Because then there won't be, a set business to take care of except hearing from everybody too. But in regards to the time for these, I do think a target ending or end time, stop time would be something to shoot for, but if it does go over, then maybe.
Could we possibly amend the, to be a target versus a mandate? So, I agree, nobody wants to stay here till 11 just because somebody's chatting away. But the subject matters vary for each meeting, today's meeting in particular, that's a lot of data, and I don't want to cut us off from questions as much as we've prepped in advance. I don't want to cut the public off. I just think if we say, okay, let's target to complete by 9.
Yeah.
But if we are here later because it's deemed necessary, I just don't want to cut everything off because we set this 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I agree with that. Generally speaking, again, having a target and being able to kind of like set the parameters around it would be, oh, there we go, emergency. We can set a target and try to hold ourselves accountable and check in at those times regarding, like, among the task force to take a vote at that time, I think would be a good compromise to that. You said something else I was gonna say. I don't remember what it was, it's gonna come back to me. There was something else that you talked about that I wanted to know, but, I want to encourage people that just because, I think, really state that just because you don't get an answer today to something doesn't mean that an answer is not ever forthcoming, right? Like, this is not the only opportunity to ask questions. Our team over here is going to go through a giant presentation that I have looked through probably 4 or 5 times right now. I know I have some questions, and I know that I'm gonna hear stuff, and then I'm gonna think about it for 3 days and have additional questions. So again, I'm hoping to kind of foster an ongoing dialogue here, but, we have a commitment, really trying to make sure that all of the questions that come to me get answered. Again, I'm not getting a ton outside of some of these things, so there are other questions, I would love to hear them so we can get them addressed, but this is not, we're not making any decisions for months. So it may be that we are not able to fully discuss or answer any questions today, but that doesn't mean that we're shutting anybody down. It doesn't mean that an answer would not be forthcoming.
So I'll read my motion. We'd like to make a motion that we set a target end time of 9 o'clock for our meetings.
A second. I have an amended motion on the floor from Mary Beth to set a target end time of 9 p.m. for these meetings, seconded by Sam Wald. Any further discussion?
Do we consider 9:30? There's a lot to discuss, I think, on a regular basis. Is 9:30 too late
As a target,
as a target?
because if we go over 9, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, but it just, we're to be consistently over, so.
Excuse me.
My point is that we're gonna be consistently over 9 o'clock, so I think it's gonna be unrealistic that we're gonna hit 9, so
So
9:30.
it 9:30.
you want me to say that our target should be 9:30? I'm happy to say that.
All right,
Recommend together.
Amended a motion to set a target time end of 9:30 for these meetings, made by Mary Beth Greenwood, seconded by Sam Wald. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Raise your hand, please. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, Alicia and Penny are opposed, the motion passes. Alicia and Penny are opposed, Mary Beth, Sam, Kristen, Carrie, and John are all in favor. Elizabeth, I can't see you, but I hope it goes good. Okay, great. There's 1, 2 things, okay. Sorry. Continuing on with the chair report, I do just want to call out that there is some work to be done by the task force itself, but I want to try to figure out where we want to address these things. So one is something I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, which is determining our stakeholder input process. Sam has requested sample surveys from Michelle that have been delivered to townspeople. So those were sent out to the task force members, and I would love for us to review and talk about those at our next meeting, so that we have some idea of people who have some time to spend with them. Think about what kind of surveys we want to do, think about the format we want to send those surveys out, how we get them out to the community. So I just wanted to flag that as something that I'm going to put on the agenda for next meeting. The second piece that I want to raise is, again, the prospect of holding specific public hearings, which are not fully accounted for in the timeline right now. So again, the goal of having public hearings would be to have a venue that is just really about having the public come and ask their questions and get us addressed. I feel like it would be good for us to schedule 1 or 2 of those throughout the course of this process before we get to the timeline date of June 6th, which is when Silvercliff Chispelli will be presenting their sort of final proposal. But I, again, would love to hear input on that. I guess I'll make a motion to consider scheduling 2 public hearings in between now and June 6th to facilitate better dialogue between us and the community.
I'll second
Any discussion?
that. We would have to coordinate with dates available at the town hall.
Yeah.
So obviously we won't have any of those dates until next meeting.
Yeah. What I would do if we want to move forward with this, I can take the lead on coordinating with town hall, figuring out what spaces are available, and then commit to coming back to the task force at the next meeting with some, like, multiple proposed dates, so we can pick two that work for people, and then go forward from there.
Yeah, and like they mentioned, maybe a Saturday as well, see if
Yeah, I think that's a great
one
idea.
Saturday and one during the week.
Yeah.
Or, multiple days to pick from, one of each.
I think it's great.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor of that motion? Great, we'll take that as an action item. And then the other business that the task force needs to conduct too is to review the sample goals and evaluation criteria that Silver Petroselli handed out at the first meeting. So again, that is a document that looks like this, an executive summary. It's available on the website. I can send it out to task force members if you haven't had it, but on the third and fourth pages, there are actually like a matrix for making decisions that looks like this. And what we should do, and what we should discuss, again, I'd like to propose to discuss it at the next meeting, is to really think about this, how we like, if all of the considerations are ordered, if everything that we want to have taken into account is on this, so that we have a good framework for understanding how we are basically evaluating the options here. All of the things like security or like traffic considerations that are maybe specific to us that aren't necessarily here, things that we want to incorporate into this, again, just to give ourselves a framework for that. So if everybody could be prepared to kind of talk about that at the next meeting, that would be really great. Any objections? Great.
Can I actually listen? I did start with a blank one, and I have a list of different criteria that I can send out to everyone.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. All right, that was, the last thing that I just wanted to mention is that we did get an inquiry, or some kind of inquiry asking about the RFP bid and the paperwork for the contract with Silver Petroselli. So if anybody else out there is looking for it, it's available on the town website. I meant to write down where you said it was, but now I forgot.
It's on the Board of Ed.
It's on the Board of Ed website.
Under district, then request for proposals.
Okay, it's on the Board of Ed website under district request for proposals. So if anybody else out there is looking for that information, that is where you can find it.
Do you think that we could link that on the task force page?
I can ask Sarah to do that.
That way it's all in one spot for ease of access.
Perfect. And that concludes my report. All right, moving on to item E, routine business. So we need to approve the minutes from the January 22nd and February 19th meetings. I'll take a motion to take those at once if anybody's interested.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 22nd meeting minutes of the school facility utilization task force regular meeting.
I'll second that.
I do have one correction.
Yes,
I never said that the Oak Hill classrooms were at Bakerville, because I know they're at Anselm.
got it. Okay, so we'll
They're not at Bakerville, that's on page 4.
Okay.
Page 4.
get that corrected. So there's one correction that
You
needs
just
to
have to take Bakerville out, just say, or you could, because I never said Anselm. I just assumed everyone knew where Oak Hill classrooms were.
Notation, sounds great. And then one additional correction to the February 19th meeting, that Shelley Lloyd.
Well, we didn't take a motion on that one yet.
Yeah, we have to.
Oh, sorry.
One at a time.
Yeah.
She made it, I seconded it.
Great. That motion to approve the amended minutes for January 22nd was made by Alicia, seconded by Penny. All of those in favor, please raise your hand.
One question clarification. So on page 3, under task force,
Mhm.
member responses to email, Michelle and Superintendent Suits are the only individuals who can respond. Is that still the case?
Oh, no.
So
But that's what was said at the.
That's what was said at the meeting.
That's why I'm asking, so this will be documented in the minutes to be accurate, and then
We can change it
should
now.
change it now?
Yeah.
So the minutes should stay, but we can add that to,
This meeting's in.
This week's
Business.
minutes, yeah.
right, we determined that that was part of the role of the chair during the process, so we don't need to action on that. It's just that the minutes reflect a reality that's no longer.
And that's
Of today,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Right.
That was then.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is now,
now.
okay, all right, great, so I don't have to do anything. Okay. We have a motion on the floor from Alicia, seconded by Penny, to approve the minutes from January 22nd with the amendment that the Oak Hill classrooms are not mentioned in conjunction with a specific location. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. That was unanimous. And then regarding the February 19th meeting, Shelley Lloyd, to make a correction to the minutes, saying that what she actually said was that she hoped the cost for essentials to bring the school up to code would be broken out.
First, let's make a motion to adopt the minutes,
Sorry.
and then we have discussion.
Make a motion to adopt the February 19th minutes.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Sam, seconded by Alicia. So I have one correction from a resident, Shelley Lloyd, who said that she hoped that, what she actually said was that she hoped that the cost for essentials to bring the school up to code would be broken out in the cost estimate. So I'd like to make that change to the minutes. That was communication from her, so I'm not putting words in her mouth. But that was the only change I had. So any further discussion on this? Minutes? Great.
No objection.
All right. I guess I'll take an amended motion to approve the minutes as amended just then.
I make a motion to approve the February
22nd.
19 minutes as amended.
Oh, sorry. Okay, second. All right, that was a motion by Mary Beth, seconded by Sam. All those in favor?
Abstaining just because I wasn't there.
Great, thank you. That was, Carrie abstained, everyone else voted in favor of that. All right, okay. The second item under routine business is a timeline check-in. So we are on time with the actual project here. I did want to propose tonight, after discussing, taking a look at the next couple of weeks with the meetings, we're going to go through the facility presentation tonight, and then for our next meeting, which is currently scheduled for April 8th, the schedule really works out that we would be discussing both the enrollment projections as well as programming in that meeting. I think that's going to be a very lengthy and meeting if we tackle both of those subjects in one meeting. So I did want to see if anybody was open to adding an additional meeting to the calendar on March 25th, 2026, which is 2 weeks from tonight, to discuss the enrollment projections and the other task force business that we just discussed. I want to add this meeting so that the whole timeline doesn't get thrown off, but I do want to make sure that during our course of our meetings, we have enough time to discuss both the enrollment projections as well as take, questions on those, and then separately the programming piece.
25th,
Repeat, was it the 25th?
The night of the 25th,
March 25th.
March 25th.
I won't be available.
You could be there.
I'm free. Okay, sounds like we should have a quorum for that meeting, which is what will be needed. So I'm going to go ahead and make that amendment to the timeline. I know Silver Petroselli is available that night, so thank you for making yourselves available for another night. And we'll get that noticed and on the calendar. So that will keep us on track from a timeline perspective, but again, give us enough time to talk about each of those topics in depth the way that they are. So thank you for being accommodating with that. That brings us to the end of routine business. So now, next on the agenda is new business, which is our presentation. So I'd like to welcome Michelle from Silver Petroselli and her team up to walk us through their report out on the conditions of our school building facilities.
Thank you everyone for having us here this evening for this important part of our study. For those who haven't met me before, I'm Bob Van, one of the principals of the firm at Silver Petroselli and Associates. I head up our engineering group, and we thought it was important to bring the engineering team here as part of this facility condition study because the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection and technology systems are such a big part typically of any kind of renovation of school that will easily consume more than 50% of the budget in most renovations. So we wanted the guys here who were the experts and saw all of it. So we'll go through quick introductions and then we'll run through the slide. It'll probably take us 35 or 40 minutes. We can jump back to any slide if need be after the questions. So I already introduced myself.
Think you all met me, Michelle Miller, project manager.
Marquise Burwell, mechanical engineer.
Nick Fawcett, also mechanical engineer.
Right, with that.
All right, so just to kind of walk you through what the facility conditions is, really we're walking around your buildings, doing a visual inspection. We are looking at your roofs, your building envelope, code compliancy, physical condition of your materials, obviously your mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. We're looking at lifespan of equipment. Most of your buildings were renovated over 20 years ago, so there's many items we're gonna prioritize for you today. So here you can see a sample of our worksheet here. This isn't specific to any of your schools, but we kind of just want to walk you through the components. And actually, I want to back up for a second. Just so you all know, we don't have a civil engineer on board, a structural engineer, or any hazmat engineering services. Sometimes studies will have all those. So you'll see, we'll note throughout the process, hazmat potential. We don't really know for sure, and we will carry an allowance for that. And I'll kind of explain that moving forward. So basically, I had a team of 3 engineers with me: plumbing, fire protection, mechanical, electrical. I handled the architectural. We break that up into the categories into the spreadsheet. We list tag numbers so we can itemize them. Then you have an assessment, which kind of hits the violation or the issue that we see. We have a system reference column. It references a code that we're applying that to, and then we apply a ranking system. The ranking is important because 1 is an urgent priority. We see that as something you should address. Either it's a major code thing that is not retroactive that you really need to address, or some type of life safety issue. 2 is a high priority item, something that should be addressed in 1 to 3 years. 3 is a moderate priority, something addressed within 3 to 5 years. And then 4 is something we see in 10 years or a recommendation. Something we actually added for the first time to these spreadsheets is a column at the end. You don't see it on this, but you'll see it as we move forward. And we're trying to track certain things that would be reimbursable by the state, so we can start to kind of overlay reimbursement as we move forward. We don't point any of the reimbursement out today, but as we get into some configurations and look at the options, we definitely will. All right? And obviously there's a cost associated with this. Cost is kind of a big thing. We're very conceptual at this phase. We don't have drawings. There's not a lot to estimate off of. So we are estimating on known issues based on historic data, recent bids, industry standards, and then when we really don't know, we look at RS means to estimating book. And then when we really, really don't know, that's when I put the word allowance in. That's when you really build something into a project that you can't see or can't quantify. So starting with Bakerville, here we are, in the original 1941 portion of the building. Renovations and additions were done in 1949, 1954, and then the modular structure in 2002. And it totals at 8,483 square feet, which is the maximum this building can currently be without a sprinkler system. We cannot go any bigger here, and it serves K2. So looking outside, as I mentioned, we don't have a civil engineer, but we did want to focus on elements kind of connected to the building associated with egress. So here you'll see some railings that aren't code compliant. The ramp doesn't have a lower 4-inch rail there that it's supposed to have. The guardrails aren't there to the basement area, someone will fall through, and then some handrails at the stair that's coming out somewhere nearby here. So then this is a sample of the spreadsheet. You'll see the site subtotal. And these are just the hard construction numbers. At the end of our spreadsheet, you're going to see a lot of costs added on. That is your general conditions for your contractor to come and set up and all of their extra kind of fees associated with that. We also add contingencies, an owner contingency at 10%, typical to do when we're so conceptual, and also an estimated contingency, again, so conceptual that we really need to do that. And then finally, a soft cost. That cost is 25%, and it's kind of an industry standard for your design fees, your testing that would go on with any of these projects. Now looking at the exterior, again, in 2002, I believe the siding, windows, and roof were redone here. Typically, they last about 20 to 30 years, and we're at about 25, and you can see some areas failing. Some of that's under the portables there, where there's kind of wood and mesh kind of rotting. So the windows are rotting. On the inside, you can see a lot of water infiltration in the sills, so they really are nearing the end of their useful life. The doors over there, there's some metal paneling that's on them that are kind of cracking and breaking, and it's also place moisture in that. The roof, obviously we do not go on any sloped roofs to assess that. So based on the age, we do know that it needs replacement, and based on some of the conditions we see, there's probably some leaks that need to be addressed. But most evidently, it's the wood on the fascias and soffits that are much older. And then also the drainage here. That's another civil item that I wanted to point out. There's a lot of mixed kind of issues going on with the drainage. There were storm boots that they are going into. The site's pretty wet around it, so just recommending to maybe do a French drain and a gravel strip all the way around, or look at the drainage a little bit. The picture all the way at the end, it's an interesting condition here. The foundation pops out past the wall, and some of the downspouts are like right on the foundation. That's really not good practice. We don't want water, draining away the foundation in the basement. So here, the architectural exterior total is at 1.36. Again, that's the hard construction number. That number is going to compound and get larger based on those add-ons that we discussed. On the interior, pointing out the floor here, there likely isn't a vapor barrier. I don't know if that's what's going to have lightness or whatnot. I don't know if it's just the finish, but just pointing out that it's probably approaching its end of useful life. There's some older carpets here, and there's also some known asbestos in the building. I think under the carpets in certain areas, we kind of try that. On the inside, we also have some wall conditions. There was a few minor things, and I included an allowance for repairs for that. But one thing to note, some of the walls are made of asbestos materials. Back in the 1940s and 50s, that was used for fireproofing, and this building needed that. So any work that has to be done is going to require abatement. So we did put a quite large allowance in for associated abatement. The ceilings here, there's a lot of leaks and fallen ceilings, and above the existing ceilings that you see, there's older ceilings that are falling onto those ceilings. So that's also an issue. On the inside also, you'll see the window there, that's some wire glazing. We don't use that anymore, it's a safety issue. That has to change out the fire rated glazing in the school. The casework here is not ADA compliant, really common for this vintage of school. You see the hatch there. It swings out, the ladder is into OSHA standards, so we're kind of calling that out. The restroom there. One of the restrooms has a very narrow entryway in, and it actually isn't ADA compliant. I think it's a big issue since the school is small, but it should have signage to bring people to the other restroom. Behind this old stage opening here is a resource room for teachers. There's no ADA access to that, so either that should be brought down to this level or a lift would need to be added. So the interior total is at 2.1 million. That includes a pretty significant allowance for abatement. I pulled that number from means. We don't normally include numbers, but just knowing that the school had a significant amount of it, we felt it's important to include.
So we want to reach those again, like life and new pregnant programs, so those degrees to limit the possible growth of Legionella, and then providing a mixing valve to drop that temperature down for distribution. So it wasn't a requirement when those were put in, it's really just a recommendation now. So it's something that makes its way into the spreadsheet There's one part of the school that we understand has a somewhat historic issue with sanitary drainage, so trying to address that either just by scoping and cleaning or potentially having to replace a portion of it. The kitchen program, kind of in general across the 3 schools, needs to be, verified. And we believe that some improvements are necessary to come into full current compliance with health code requirements in the kitchens. And that gets into things like pre-separation and the proper number of hand sinks, et cetera. Later, Nick and Marquise will be talking about the potential for HVAC upgrades, and one of the recommendations will include moving toward a propane heating source. If we do that, obviously, the plumbing systems would need to incorporate a significant propane source and distribution. And as Michelle had noted, there is no sprinkler system here. Again, that's not mandated, but the state of Connecticut does require all new construction of schools or a full renovation to include a sprinkler system, which for buildings that are on a well system is a significant expense. Let's see, these are just some more images of those items showing the existing propane. You can see the water heaters there. And here at this school, the water heater for the kitchen is really in the main kitchen area. We would certainly recommend locating that into a sort of dedicated space. And this is the spreadsheet for plumbing and fire protection. Again, as Michelle noted, these are raw construction costs, and we're looking at $780,000. And a large portion of that, about half of that, would be to provide a sprinkler system for the building. And with that, we'll shift over to Marquise.
Good evening. So by mechanical, we mean heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So we did evaluate the schools for any upgrade possibilities for those. You see here in the top row of photos, this is in the boiler room, and the boiler is clearly in poor condition. There's areas of rust, visible damage. Down on the bottom, that's the combustion damper. It's showing that it's kind of failing open, so that's allowing air, moisture to leak into the building. That's not usually recommended. And so, yeah, the boiler system, the entire hot water system, that would include the piping, the pumps, the VFDs, everything is kind of overall in poor condition, nearing the end of its useful lifespan. So we did look into potential replacements for that. The bottom here, that's a unit ventilator. So how it works is it kind of pulls air through the bottom and acts almost like a vacuum cleaner. So it's pulling all that dust and debris across the bottom of the floor, which is not really recommended from an air quality standpoint. And so we looked into changes for that as well. And then the kitchen photo here shows that there is gas-fired stove, and generally we, depending on what the product would be, we recommend a form of fire suppression or exhaust, smoke exhaust in that area as well. So we looked into those options. You also see for the portables, there are 4 rooftop units. They handle the heating, ventilation, air conditioning for the portables. They're propane fired, but they appear to be approaching the end of their useful lifespan. So we looked into kind of one-to-one replacements for that. And as well, the exhaust fan system is generally not recommended to just exhaust air and then kind of pull air in through the windows, just because it's unconditioned air. It's kind of an energy dump, and it doesn't, it's not the most efficient option. So we looked into, central air conditioning, or at least supplying conditioned air to the building. And so then our costs include the demolition of current equipment, the introduction of high efficiency boilers, so that there could be some energy savings there. Generally, for high efficiency boilers, they would need to be some form of gas fired. So we looked into a replacement for a propane tank that would be dedicated to the boiler. Definitely a second boiler for redundancy. Then just several options for central air in the various classrooms and and offices. And so in the end, we land on about 2.2 million, going, rounding up. And so that's what the final cost there for Bakerville.
Before I jump into the electrical, I'm just going to go slightly off agenda here, just to speak to the topic of ventilation, as Marquise noted. It's been the biggest change in the state's requirements for here in Connecticut over the last 5+ years, really ever since the COVID pandemic. ASHRAE compliant ventilation of schools is becoming a requirement for new work, and it's now improving your HVAC systems is now reimbursable by the state, where it didn't used to be. So they're mandating improving the air supply to the buildings, but they are also helping to foot the bill for those improvements. So, going over to the electrical service or the electrical systems in general, the main electrical service equipment in this building is really near the end of its useful life, and at a point where replacement parts are very difficult to obtain. So certainly recommend looking at a replacement of that out of concern that a failure could leave you without power for a lengthy period of time. I'll also note that, as with a couple items here, if a major HVAC upgrade is undertaken in this building, the electrical service would need to be significantly upgraded in order to power the additional ventilation and air conditioning equipment. There's no generator at this building. Certainly that is not a requirement. We just see it frequently in schools to help freeze protect the building, help you have an orderly dismissal should there be a loss of power, etc. The lighting systems within the building they have been retrofit with LEDs, so they are relatively efficient as they are. But as with many of the MEP systems at 20+ years of age, the physical acrylic lenses, the housings are nearing the end of their useful life, and they are decreased in efficiency. So if we undertake a program where we are running sprinkler piping throughout the building or ductwork throughout the building such that ceilings and lighting would have to come down, we would absolutely recommend that those old fixtures not go back up, but that they be replaced as part of that program. And beyond that, there are just a handful of more minor electrical issues within the building. Your life safety systems here, and really in all three buildings, are in reasonably good condition. The fire alarm systems are reasonably new and ADA compliant. The exit signage and emergency lighting, while we didn't go around and test them all, are provided in reasonable quantity. So your raw life safety items, and as such, your priority items for electrical are fairly low. We did also look briefly at the technology and electronic security systems. There was a question previously on security. And of course, security comes in two forms in security in schools: physical security with locks and ballistic glazing, and electronic security with cameras and card access. So you have a reasonable level of security and a good system of replacement, it appears, going on with technology. Certainly there would be some minor upgrades, but we didn't see it as a major item. So here at Bakerville, the electrical number in total that we had was 445,000 under raw numbers. And I'll pass it to Michelle, who's going to hit the big picture numbers.
Yes. So now you're looking at charts where we're putting all of the categories: site, exterior, interior, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, all in with those add-ons. And the total here is roughly 11.7 million. You can look at it as priorities too. We have a lot of priority twos because all the ADA items are to a bunch of other items, but your ones are fairly low. Okay, so now moving on to New Hartford. So constructed in 1954, renovated in 2004. It's 23,405 gross square feet, and it serves your pre-K through 2 population. So on the site,
is it possible to ask questions about the single schools, and this is up for debate? Because it's harder to go back.
Yeah, do you want to take up D and talk about Bakerville?
That's what I'm thinking, if there's questions relevant to Bakerville, but I think there's also gonna be questions that we know that now about Bakerville, that'll answer questions that we have for the next two schools.
Yeah, let's take a beat and answer questions about Bakerville. Only when the task force break down, just to go right ahead. Carrie, since you raised it, why don't you,
Well, you actually raised it to me, so I just want to start.
I did have a question, but I'll start out with the portable, the temporary modular classrooms. You don't really talk about them except for the rooftop units pretty much, maybe some exterior stuff. What is your opinion of the rest, the remaining life expectancy on those?
Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit, but didn't mark it up. Technically, they are past their useful life. However, I've seen in many communities where they just keep them for decades and decades. I personally think it's better to invest your money into a structure with a foundation versus the portables, but I didn't include that in here. We could put a number, I mean, what would the number be, I guess is where we go. Demolish it and rebuild,
Well, I'm not looking to demolish and rebuild per se for a school. I mean, it's something to consider if we go for another use, like, also, if it remains as a school, what is the likelihood that we will be using those classrooms 10 years from now? Should we be considering doing something now if we want to keep this school open? Or, a demolition cost, if we're going to use this building as something else and we just don't need that space anymore?
yeah, and that's something, as we explore all of our options, we definitely could incorporate and get into those costs.
Okay. But we don't really know exactly how long they will last in their existing condition.
No, I think they need a lot of repairs, like if I showed you the outside, the skirting area, all of that. I mean, I didn't crawl under there and look at the piers, I don't know their condition, the stuff you can't see, I don't know about. But there wasn't anything else majorly glaring.
Okay.
Definitely the exterior, and then whatever you guys had for the inside. I didn't have a lot in there. Some programmatic things like that corridor is so narrow, especially with all of their coats and storage there. It almost brings, it's an 8-foot corridor, the minimum 6. When you have that there, you basically have the minimum. So there's some unfavorable characteristics about it.
Yeah. You talked a lot about, a few times about asbestos, because this is obviously the highest asbestos abatement cost of the 3 schools.
Yes.
It's at $70 per square foot.
And that was when I, again, looked at that means book, because I didn't really know where to go with that. I have looked on 2 other buildings with similar conditions to here, and they were close to $1 million. They were a little bigger. But
Okay.
you're also taking materials out and you need to put things back. So I felt it was a good placeholder.
And you mentioned asbestos under the carpet and some walls are made would have some asbestos inherent in them for a fire stop.
Yes.
How many walls?
I don't have the original drawings or the 1949 drawings, but I reviewed it in the 1954 set. So that whole section definitely has it. I reviewed the HERA reports and found a few items, they don't get into much detail. But the whole exterior used to have asbestos siding on it. That's something I mentioned in the report, but I don't think I said. The ratings of this school, I can't be sure of. The corridor is supposed to be 1 hour. You see sheetrock, it looks like that's the intent. But there was asbestos siding, which helped the rating also on the exterior. I don't know if that's been taken off and it's sided over. So there's questions about the ratings that I can't be sure of.
Okay.
Those would go away, I believe, with the sprinkler, at least the corridor would. So the sprinkler would solve some issues like that.
Okay. And I just had another question on and this is, I noticed it for all 3 schools, where you have the electricity upgrade as a priority 1, but yet the other HVAC stuff that you would need the electricity for is priority 2. Why do you guys do that?
Yeah, I think those stayed at a 1 because of the age here and, so they should be upgraded now because of their age and condition. But it's a fair point. It probably makes more sense to align those with the HVAC work priority-wise.
So you think HVAC should be more priority one?
Well, I was thinking more that the
Electric.
electrical should align with
Priority.
whenever the HVAC is done. So
Right,
that's
well,
the-
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, sorry, just one question about that, I guess, is that one of the things you mentioned regarding the electrical was that, I think it's just one of the panels, there might be multiple panels, but one of them was provided by somebody who's no longer in business,
Correct.
right? So I assumed that that was why one of them was a priority one, because if those people go out of business, or like if we needed that failed, then we're like.
Well, they're all noted as, in all three schools, they're all noted as priority one, yet all the HVAC work is priority two.
Yeah,
I understand you want to do electrical upgrades before you do your HVAC stuff, otherwise it just doesn't work, but, right, align those, I think, do it, and make a note like this should be done in conjunction with HVAC. Because that's the note in the electricity, is that the electrical work is for AC projects.
Would it be better to phase that, though?
I think we'll have to talk about that. I was just curious why one was priority one and one was priority two. They look like they should go together.
That makes sense, because then you can better gauge the size of your panels to accommodate the amperage needed.
The work
for
that
the
you're going
HVAC.
to do. Because I can't see us doing all of this work, right? Can't see us doing all this work.
You mentioned replacement, or for propane tank replacement. What are the current tanks on the property? Because I don't notice any remediation of what is currently sourcing this building. It was only mentioned in Antolini, but I believe we have 4 oil tanks somewhere in this district.
Yes, and I
Those are, yeah, they're somewhere in the exterior near the portals. You'd have to look at a site plan of exactly pointed out. But there are a few oil tanks that would need to either be removed or somewhat abandoned if we're gonna stick to a fully propane system.
Okay.
Yeah, there is one towards where the basement stair is out, right?
So the oil for this property is not included in any of this estimate, either the,
oil tank replacement,
yeah, 'cause that's,
It's a high level cost, but it was based on a historic, or former project that had a similar kind of fuel oil tank removal. So it's a high level.
Part of the line item for the heating system replacement.
Yeah, to go to propane and then you'd be done with the fuel oil. tanks.
I think what you're getting to, so I think there is both oil and propane being used at the school for different purposes, I think is what you're getting at here, is my understanding of the.
no, so I'm trying to figure out, because we have a deadline of replacing or
Yes.
removing and replacing the oil tanks, 4 oil tanks somewhere in these facilities that I think should be somewhere factored in the level
Yeah.
1 or 2, because we're looking at a 5-year, $1 million plan that's already in the capital budget, potentially, that I think should be incorporated into this. And I didn't see the oil tanks mentioned.
There's definitely one here,
Okay.
I think there's one at every, there's 2 in Angelini.
2 in
and one at
Angelini,
each
1
of
in
the
Hartford, and 1
schools.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that we can put down as it's an own individual line.
Own individual, yeah, because I was like, it's not an exterior, it's
Yeah.
not in mechanical, where does it fall? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you just explain, this is more of an overall question, why, just the benefits of switching to propane overall?
Yeah, so it depends on the system you go with. So like a boiler, we would recommend a condensing boiler, which is just really high efficiency. But there really aren't a lot of options for fuel oil condensing boilers. They would have to be propane fired. Then you also, just a lot of the end use equipment, like the heating, the heating rooftop units and things like that, they're just more efficient. And so long-term, there would be an energy savings there that we did consider in thinking about, okay, not only do you have this upfront cost and you have possible reimbursement, but you also have long-term savings that, aren't as easy to quantify, but they are there.
Any other questions for, about Bakerville?
2 quick questions. What does VTC mean?
I'm sorry, it is in the report somewhere.
Okay.
Vinyl composite tile.
Thank you. Because I just mentioned up here too. Okay, thank you. And if something had the little tiny box next to it, that's where you think there could be
Could be
potential
reimbursement.
reimbursement.
And I am gonna tally those out, and we're gonna compare all the
Yeah,
options.
okay.
That's kind
Just
of
making
the-
sure I understood that.
But no asbestos was not checked off for a reimbursement.
I think if it is within, I didn't wanna like hit it, because I don't know for certain, but if it was within a project scope, I think it could be.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, you are done.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the site here, there is a meandering pathway that does bring you to the main entrance, but the ADA walk is questionable to me. I've had someone flag one like this, so I flagged it myself here, learning my lesson. I still think it's great to have ADA access, it's just a long rooted way. So I was including a cost for a ramp. Also in your courtyard, there's no accessible pathway, so we have that. And then similar to Bakerville, the drainage there, you know, the ground around the building is pretty wet. Maybe it's the winter we've had, I don't know, but I felt like I needed to call that out. That maybe a French drain system, a gravel strip, something to help it. So the exterior, you have a masonry construction. This is not a cavity wall, it's a brick veneer against a CMU wall, so they are very inefficient energy-wise. But the masonry's held up pretty well. Usually a school of this age, I would flag a lot more masonry repair work, but I do have a little bit there for some. So the windows were replaced in 2004, I believe. They are, you know, there was no issue that I noted with them, but they are starting to approach that end of life, so I did incorporate those. The roof, I think everyone knows that the roof needs to be replaced. In my report, I actually said I thought it was done in 2004. I spoke with Mr. Jerem, and he actually told me it was 1980. So no wonder why this roof needs to be replaced. You can see a lot of moss growing on the roof. It's really wet. The gravel is kind of stripped away. The soffits are really what's in disrepair. I did flag those as a 1. That one hanging there, someone could walk by. You know, I don't want it to fall on someone. So the totals are
Can you elaborate on your recommended roof?
I'm sorry?
Can you elaborate on the recommended roof type?
We went with a TPO. You can go with, at first I was thinking bituminous because that's what was there, but TPO is done all the time now.
What is TPO?
Oh, no, don't
Sorry,
I,
can you like describe it in like normal people?
it's a membrane, it's a
Okay.
rubber roof membrane.
Great, thank you.
But there's a way more technical, it's an acronym for something that I never remember. So the exterior is totaling at 1.24. On the interior, so just looking at some of the finishes, similar floor condition on some of the BCT, vinyl composite tile in the corridors there. The wood floor in the gym's pretty good, just starting to notice some gaps that at some point that floor will need to be refinished and it looks like it has more life to it. The picture of the brick inside, you know, I did notice some cracking. Again, I'm not a structural engineer, we don't have one. I don't think it's any major issue. You don't see any of it coming out of plane, but I just wanted to mention it. You can see some paint that's needed on the wall. I really think that's from the roof coming down, so don't fix anything until you fix the roof, really. Same with the ceilings. I think it's all tied to the roof. I did notice there, similar to here at Bakerville, there is an existing ceiling above some of those rooms, so there's 2 ceilings to remove at that point. On the inside, again, it's more kind of some ADA issues. You guys have done a great job. First of all, and I didn't say this, the schools are all very well maintained. All of this is just 20 years since the renovation. So you've done a great job maintaining your buildings. I see a lot that's been done. Normally I'm flagging a lot more ADA items in your bathrooms, door hardware. You have done a great job updating a lot of that. A few knobs more in the back of house areas that I did know and had a price for. The signage, I think at all the schools I flagged are not ADA compliant, so those should be replaced. Casework, again, at all the schools, they don't meet ADA requirements. Your bathrooms, they were renovated in 2004. Some of the grab bars have changed since then, so flagging with grab bars. So the interior items total up to 2.12. And just so you know, I want to flag this one. The egress out of the courtyard it technically does meet code, but often fire marshals require us to, for interior courtyards, to drive a corridor right through directly out. It is the safest thing, so we're doing that in any new project. A lot of times they don't want to close them anymore just for added safety, but also people like them enclosed for security. There's, mixed reasons, so I think if there was any renovation here, that should be considered. But I did put it as a 4 because it's not technically required. And I did include insulating walls on the inside to get better thermal value, higher energy efficiency, and those are allowed reimbursement by the state.
Give your voice a rest. All right, you will hear some repeat items as we go from school to school, but here in New Hartford, the water heaters were more recently replaced. So relative to those, you just have that mixing valve condition, and we do still have the issue of the program for the kitchen and just verifying the exact kitchen use and needs of some of those accessories. The picture in the lower right there is the sprinkler system here at New Hartford. So or not here at New Hartford, but at New Hartford. So that building is fully sprinklered, which, as Michelle noted earlier, does provide you some savings in terms of some of the ratings, fire ratings, et cetera. So the total here, because of the sprinkler system considerably smaller, you get $262,000 for plumbing and fire protection. So if you are just partially put electrical and plumbing together.
It's okay. So the mechanical here in New Hartford Elementary, there are 2 steam boilers, so it is a steam system, not a hot water like Bakerville. The boilers are, you have the one newer boiler that is in pretty fair condition, and then the other that's in poor condition. But the entire boiler system, the steam system, is overall in pretty poor condition. There's a lot of pipe that's uninsulated, so it's just kind of losing heat. The condensate recovery system is it's uninsulated and in pretty poor condition. So overall, we thought about, okay, let's get off of a steam system onto a hot water system that's more efficient by nature, and then also just has less losses, so future payback savings. The school is mostly on exhaust fans again, so a lot of the classrooms have these little floor grills that are just taking air up and bringing in air through the windows and the doors. It's, again, generally not recommended because it's unconditioned air. It's not being cooled or heated. That's just being brought in, and then the heating system has to keep up with that. You see more, that's the uninsulated pipe, just hundreds of feet of it. They're also the unit ventilators again, so they're doing the same thing. They're pulling air through the bottom, bringing all that dust and debris, and that's kind of mixing with the breathable air. Overall, we thought about just ideas of, again, just having a ventilation system that's dedicated to classrooms, offices, to getting away from exhaust fans and trying to have conditioned air be brought into the building. And so the price here for New Hartford is about $2.8 million. That includes the same idea, going from fuel oil to propane-fired hot water boilers at this point, new pumps, new piping, the central air, central heating, and just having more up-to-date systems that would be able to, bring energy savings long-term.
All right, so back to electrical. Similar to Bakerville, the main electrical equipment here is at the end of its useful life and of a brand that replacement parts are difficult to obtain. So, recommendation is replacement of that. However, similar to prior discussions, if we are targeting at least an eventual major HVAC upgrade, you wouldn't want to just replace this in kind because it would not be large enough to handle that HVAC system. So that's where we can start to talk about priority one versus priority 2. There is no generator at New Hartford. Again, similar discussions. It's not mandated, just something we see more districts going to, at least for some portion of the building. The lighting really at all three schools is the same condition. It's older fixtures, housings, lenses, but with modern efficient LED lamps within them. So same scenario, if we are taking those down in order to accomplish one of the, well, in the case of New Hartford, 4 HVAC systems, we would recommend a replacement there. Again, the life safety systems were pretty good with your emergency lighting, and the fire alarm. There are some minor things that were recommended in terms of some signage and breaker locks. There were a couple areas where we saw potential need for a couple more emergency lights, but again, those, while it is life safety, it was a minor infraction or a smaller sort of back of house area. The electrical here came in at 644,000. And just looking to see what that new electrical service is about 160. So that would, if that went, well, that's still in there, but that 160 is your biggest priority one item here. So if that's slipped down to a priority 2, it would shift in this slide.
So these are where the overall cost for New Hartford came out, although I do have a typo on here. I had made an update to the roof number that didn't make it into the slide. Unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. I can update it, but it's at 12.4 million, the total. And you can see a lot of that goes to mechanical. We're taking a big portion of the budget, and then you see a lot of that's in priority 2. Do we want to pause here for some New Hartford?
I had a note,
Sorry, just, for those at home, the roof number, it's 819, 175, and what was shown, what's the,
I
an
don't,
update.
is it 400,000 more than that?
yes.
Like 1.2-ish?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, but what, 1.2-ish?
It is, but then with that added, all those contingencies added on, I can give you the number exactly, I'm not sure.
It's okay.
It's not-
Should get it updated in the presentation before we publish that out.
Yes, I sent you an updated book with it in, and I'm gonna double check it, yes, did I miss something? I think I missed that last slide, yeah, you'll see.
So the roof is at 1,064,745 now. Over the 800,000 that it was, it's like 819.
Yeah.
There's a few other things that got changed as well, I don't know the exact things that got changed, but that was the major change. But she updated that. She went from the bituminous roof to the TPO roof.
Yeah, and I had some of the area wrong, so I updated that, I didn't account for the overhangs or the metal roof, because there is a metal roof too, at the entrance.
Yeah.
So just incorporating that.
I'm screen sharing for folks at home. that's why.
And also, we added, we didn't have the radon testing, that's what it was. It was 3,500 for radon testing.
I wanted to note that the New Hartford Elementary paid $47,000 for a new boiler in 2021. So I'm just surprised that, we know that old Bessie, if that was her name, she's a relic. But apparently she worked just fine not that long ago when she was needed to be as a backup. But I'm surprised that the other one is in poor condition that we just paid for in 2021.
Yeah, it's still relatively fair condition, but the overall system is in poor condition. So rather than upgrading the whole system, or rather than upgrading the individual boiler and letting it run on its own, we looked at a full system upgrade for getting away from steam onto hot water, away from fuel oil onto propane, because that's just long-term a better solution.
Okay.
I have a question. Now, it's just, I don't know the answer, but if we're discussing a potential for, more conditioned air, so like central air conditioning and then central heating, would forced hot air, I mean, obviously, I know there's duct work that would need to be done and whatnot, and that's a cost in itself. But is that a more cost-effective system, or is the hot water, like, can the steam pipes be used for hot water? I don't think so, can they?
No, we wouldn't recommend reusing the steam pipes just
Well, it's
because
all
of
bad.
different systems. Chemical degrading of the pipes, yeah, it'd be a lot, but forced warm air is an option for maybe propane-fired rooftop units and that type of system. So that is another option. I guess if overall the heating system were to be upgraded to a hot water system, might as well design it to serve that hot water to the units anyway.
Okay.
But forced room air is definitely an option.
One thing I'll note with that is if you were to make the decision that you wanted to put in a generator to back up the heating system, we can do that with a much cheaper generator for just firing the boilers and the pumps as opposed to having to run those big rooftop air handlers to heat the building. That's not the reason to make the decision, but it's a fact.
And if we had a generator, we wouldn't need a redundant boiler?
The redundant boiler is really more in looking into the case of the boiler itself going down as opposed to a loss of power.
Okay.
So. Good on your part.
Okay, take a look at it. Anthony. All right, constructed in 1968, renovated in 1990 and 1992. It totals over 58,000 square feet, serving your 3rd through 6th grade. Just one ADA item. Typically, since that's another kind of main entrance that's open, that should have some ADA access. From the gym, there's a really steep sidewalk that's not compliant, and then from the auditorium, there's a egress ramp that goes up to stairs, so it kind of leaves you trapped. So some type of ramp should be included. So that's at 22,000 there. Again, the exterior masonry I thought was in great condition. A few little minor areas. You can see some upkeep of repointing that has been done, but a lot of cracking at the control joints and the expansion joints of the building. So that should be redone. Your windows were replaced, I think, in 2004. I can't remember exactly, but the windows are good. Some rusty lintels. The soffits, I've noticed a few seams there. And then that interior picture, that is the expansion joint leaking inside from the roof. So expansion joints definitely need to be replaced. So the exterior totals at 71,000. So on the inside, I love this middle picture because you kind of see the two vintages, the 1968 tiled corridor with used to have windows that are covered up, and then you have your ground-based block of your additions. We just included some costs to kind of clean up the block. It kind of gets a little dirty. Again, I called it a number 4. It's just a recommendation. The flooring's in fair condition. Some areas look like they had some seam spreading. There's a little bit more wired glass that I had mentioned at this school. That can be replaced without fire rated glazing. You don't need that there. The tile floor that you see at the bottom left, that is the old locker rooms beyond the gym. Those rooms are used for storage in an office, but it's kind of this falling apart locker room. You can renovate that, so we included a cost for that. The ceilings are in fair condition, but I did include a cost to replace them. If you go with your HVAC project, you'll need to do the ceilings at that point. On the inside, we didn't have a lot of issues. Again, the casework, most of the casework is still not ADA compliant. Some new grab bars that you need, pipe guards at sinks, there's a few missing. The stairs to the side of the stage are not code compliant. And just in the gymnasium, I did bring it up for all of your gyms or multi-purpose rooms to maybe try to incorporate some wall padding. I know there's a lot going on in these rooms, so it's not too easy, but it would make for a safer gym time. So the interior here is totaling up at 1.57 million.
All right, moving on to the plumbing and fire protection at Antonini. The building is fully sprinklered because Antonini is on a well system. You have a separate pump house with a fire pump and a separate storage tank for water. So that's part of what the kind of system you would need to take on here if you were going to fire protect this building because of the well system. The sprinkler system in general seemed to be in good condition and was regularly observed and maintained. But the fire pump itself is nearing the end of its useful life, so we did carry a cost in there for a scheduled just one-for-one replacement of that unit. Water heaters at Antonini it's in the top left there, we're nearing the end of their useful life. The smaller one was a little newer, but the larger ones we're in that category, and we've got the same concern relative to the mixing valves. For the water heaters, again, we're looking at, we carried that line item for propane system. Relative to the HVAC, and we have the same items that we're reviewing relative to the kitchen program. So your total plumbing and fire protection number here was 491,000. With that, we're going to finally let Nick talk. If you want, Nick, I can advance through a couple of slides.
Yeah, that's perfect. Hello, everybody. What's happening in the back? But, that's my turn. So for mechanical, as Marquise kind of brought us through the other schools, it's going to be very similar to this one as well. But primary objectives are heating and ventilation. If we give you guys cooling, everybody would be happy, but I guess you gotta, it's further down the line. So for the central heating plant, we're seeing something that parallels to the other schools. You have fuel, oil. You have two hot water boilers that were installed in 2000, so 26 years old, nearing end of life. We also have the fuel oil tank that's in the ground outside, that's also nearing end of life. That hot water goes around to all the air handler units around the building for heating. And then also in many of the classrooms, you can see this center picture. You see that same unit ventilator that you see at other schools. That also has a hot water boiler, so you're getting heating from that. And then by the entrances and in the corridor, you're gonna have more perimeter radiation, which is also hot water. For the ventilation systems, it's a couple different systems spread throughout the school. The best stuff is in the gymnasium / cafeteria and the auditorium. You have two systems for both of them. You have an air handler unit for heating, and you have a rooftop unit for cooling, and you kind of switch between the two. Those are, they're like 2016, 2017, so those are in the best shape at the school. However, for the kitchen, which is next to the cafeteria, you have a makeup air unit that's from 1968. You can kind of see it dead center. It's the most obvious thing that's in poor condition. That thing we recommend for that to be replaced. For other parts of the school, you have two primary conditions for the classrooms. You have unit ventilators, which is the same logic as we talked about before. You bring outside air in, goes to the unit ventilator, gets heated, put in the classroom. And then you have exhaust fans in the ceiling that kind of shoot it out through the sidewall. We found that the exhaust fans were inoperable, and the unit ventilators are as old as the building. And then for 6 classrooms on either ends of the wings, you have air handler units that are 30 years old that are in the ceiling space. And these are your typical like diffusers and grills within classrooms like this, obviously in a classroom space. And those are just heating, they're hot water grills. There is a little bit of cooling spread around the building for some offices. That's relatively young too, but definitely most of the school does not have cooling. I think it's just cafeteria, auditorium, library, and then maybe like a couple offices. But most of the classrooms, no cooling. What we recommend is similar to the other schools as well. Take out the unit ventilators and put in new rooftop equipment for bringing in ventilated air. This would be, what it looks like now is like 5 systems. They would have a hot water coil on it for heating, and then you're gonna have supplemental heating plus cooling with VRF heat pumps that are spread throughout the perimeter of the school. So for cost, the number one costs are going to be your heating system. As we touched on, it's nearing end of life, and that tank needs to be removed anyway, or abandoned in place, one of the two. So it is a decent time in the next 10 years to replace these oil hot water boilers with new propane-fired hot water boilers, condensing boilers with higher efficiencies. So that's number one priority. Number 2 would be the ventilation stuff that I talked about. So the rooftop equipment and the VRF heat pumps that would bring the heating and the cooling in the spaces. And then the other stuff is serving the auditorium and the cafeteria, the stuff that's not as valuable right now.
Bottom line, I think there it was 4.6.
Oh, yes. The most valuable number.
All right. Thanks. As we transition from mechanical to electrical, it reminded me of one item that actually we haven't spoken of that goes across all 3 schools. As part of the mechanical upgrades, the heating and ventilating upgrades, included in those costs is installation of a centralized building management system, BMS system, So that's basically an electronic control for your new, somewhat complicated HVAC systems. It will keep them operating optimally. It also allows you to troubleshoot issues centrally from a laptop anywhere in the district, and it can send alarms should an area get out of temperature range, and into freeze concerns. So that is something we're recommending for all 3 schools and included in the costs that you saw. Let's see. All right. Lastly, talking about electrical at Antolini. The electrical service equipment here is still of a serviceable age, so it certainly can stay to power the building as is. But again, it would need to be upgraded if we move in the direction of a full ventilation and air conditioning system. The lighting is the same as the others, older fixtures that we would recommend replacement of if they need to be impacted due to a project. You do have a generator at Antolini backing up a portion of the, actually I think it backs up the entire building if I recall correctly. If that generator were to stay and we move forward with a service upgrade, it would only back up a portion of the building at that point. It is a diesel-fired generator and in reasonably good condition. These are just some more images, again, of some of those life safety systems, but really only saw minor other issues. Right in the middle of the screen there, you can see one of the things we tend to flag. Anytime we see extension cords used in a space, unless they're for temporary purposes like this, it's really it's an electrical code violation. We're supposed to have outlets in locations sufficient to preclude the need for extension cords. So again, minor item that we did include in the report, and the estimate, which here at Antolini electrically has a $950,000 total. You closed.
So Antolini totaled at 12.9, almost $13 million. Again, a bigger school. We had less items here, I think, aside from mechanical. You can see it's quite large. So do we want to pause here and talk about Antolini?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But not Anthony, but just a question on, I saw, I think somewhere in your report that you're estimating the grant funding to be at 45%?
I think it's
For
44.7.
those items, for items that are marked. Is that for each school or just an average?
So the whole reason I didn't do it yet is each school is going to be different. It's going to be based on enrollment. I've started to run those numbers and your number is going to come down because of enrollment.
Yeah.
So that's
why we started this.
exactly. So that's when we're going to start, getting into and exploring the best route.
Okay.
So I will when we're done with Anthony.
Any other hands with any questions? All right, that's straightforward.
The oil was included into it, and I can't find it for my own question now. They made a note of it. Replace existing fuel tank at 700.
Yes,
So that's tanks plural, correct?
I believe so.
I think that's just one oil tank and its replacement. So,
Okay, so it's 2.
There's 2.
There's 2 ones.
oh, it might have been 2. Okay.
We'll double check it.
Okay.
We'll look at the oil tanks and make sure we have them at each school. and
Because I'm
update
also
that.
curious, because I think our numbers are several years or a few years old, so that's also part of the.
This is what he was quoting was a replacement of pulling a tank out, the oil tank out, and then replacing with a propane system. But the numbers that the Board of Ed had, I think it's just full on replacing the oil tank.
Exactly.
With another oil tank and not converting the system from oil to propane.
Okay, it said just remove and remove and replace existing fuel tank. Got it.
We'll
Oh, to look
Okay,
at,
more tanks, I guess my big question was 1 or 2.
Carrie, if you have one column that says remove existing oil tank and install new propane tank underground.
Yep, I see that, yeah.
So that's, the Board of Ed was, as Christian was saying, take the existing tank out and oil tank back in, so no change to propane. That was $250 per tank.
Actually, you guys were quoting taking oil tank out and leaving it out.
Leaving it above ground?
Well, so
Above
the
ground,
new tank comes in, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
new tank that goes in place, that $250 per tank.
But yeah, the question on number.
Okay, we'll double check those and make sure we got it all.
Also, these numbers don't include their contingency and soft costs.
Exactly, so they're kind of, you'll see them, they're in there, these charts, you'll see them. Okay, so just looking at them all together, and I do apologize, the New Hartford number is still off on these slides, so it's the 12.4 million. So, just looking at them with each other, seeing all the priorities, kind of totaling them up, different ways of looking at it. We like to look at cost per square foot, just to help evaluate it. The typical cost for a new school today is around $1,000 a square foot, so that's just something to compare it to. And then we also use the FCI index. It's a recognized metric to help evaluate buildings. So basically taking that laundry list of numbers, I did update the number for New Hartford Thank you. And then you divide it by the cost of replacing it new. So basically I took the same square footage, multiplied that by 1,000, and you come up with these numbers, and it puts Antolini in the good to fair zone, New Hartford's in the poor zone, and Bakerville becomes in the deficient zone. So I'm not saying anything, it's just a metric to use to kind of start to evaluate things. And with that, we just want to say this is really the beginning. This is just understanding where your schools are at today so we can start to move on and make some good decisions on where you want to go in the future. This little graphic there is kind of a lot of the components that go into a typical study like this, and we are pretty much doing all of those. Essentially, ed specifications would happen after a study when you're going to go for a project, but our study will kind of have a light version of that incorporated. So we're looking forward to moving on to the next phase, and next one we'll look at projections and see how that affects everything.
Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate all this work. For those of you that are following along at home or in the audience, I'm going to give them a couple of days to make some of the corrections in the numbers that we've cited tonight, so that then we'll get it up, the presentation that we walked through tonight, up online for you all to review and look at in more detail, particularly some of those slides where the numbers are a little bit smaller. So I'll get that, I'll work with Michelle. We'll definitely commit to having that updated before the next meeting, but as soon as it's publicly available, we'll make sure that we get it up so that everybody can look at it.
Should do.
Are you also gonna load the larger document for public review? in case anybody wants?
I think so. I think, so the book, what you're referring to is the book, that's going to be iterated on multiple times, I believe, throughout the course of the project. So we can certainly, if you look like you're comfortable making that available, so I think we
Again,
probably
just
just
make
put
some
some
updates
draft
to the
things on
numbers
there.
and make sure it traces through all the charts.
If anybody wants.
Yeah,
I think the narratives help if you really want to understand.
there were a couple of, I will just note for anybody that there were a couple of things about security that were in the book that were not in the presentation, but I did already double check with Jeff, who I think is in the audience, that it is okay, what is in there, he's comfortable with having public, so we're clear on that element. So if you're comfortable with it, again, any edits, we'll give you a couple times to make some edits to make sure that the numbers are good. We'll label it with a big draft and let people know that that's something that will be iterated on over time, but yeah, that sounds great to me. Any other questions from the task force for SPA? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. I'm going to move back to the agenda. We just have like one other thing to comment, and if I can just ask you guys to hang out, so if we have public comments and there's something that you need your help clarifying, that would be really awesome, but don't feel the need to sit. There's also some water over there if you cannot have some. I'm sorry for these. Great. All right, moving on to old business. I just want to discuss the public comment protocol. So there was a little bit of I would say, confusion during the last public meeting regarding some of the public comment protocol, specifically whether or not we were going to have a time limit on individual comments from members. It was something that was in the protocol document that everybody read, but not everybody saw that portion of it. So I just want to have like a confirmed clarification from the task force regarding how we want to handle public comment with any particular time limit for an individual. I would say that I would expect that we impose a time limit would be like on a per comment basis, and I wouldn't necessarily want it to preclude someone getting up again during the meeting if they have a follow-up question or something else. It's just about trying to keep the conversation moving forward. So with that, I will open up the floor to potential. I'd like to actually just make a clear motion on this so that we can just sort it out and be clear about this. So I would entertain a motion to confirm that we plan to limit public comment to 3 minutes per comment as within the protocol document.
But I don't want to make a motion to limit to public comment to 3 minutes, and if you're saying if we don't make a motion, then that document stands that if you have this standard 3-minute limit, I am in total disagreement with that.
At the last meeting though, in the beginning of it, we agreed on it and then.
No, we did not agree on it.
Do we need a motion on the floor?
Yeah, motion.
Yeah.
For discussion.
To discussion.
Motion to discuss.
Motion by John. Okay, I made a motion and
You
then
just
John.
make a motion to discuss, you should make a motion to do something, some action.
I made the motion to confirm a 3-minute time limit for public comment that was, as was laid out in the protocol. So if you want to second that.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Be great. So motion by Kristen, second by John Puz. Let's discuss.
Oh, I said that.
Well, I would like to just add that if there is a long list of people who want to comment, then time limits are appropriate, but if there are only a few people and we have the time, we should give people the extra time, I think. But when there are a lot of people who want to comment, time limits could be a way to allow more people to have a chance.
I do want to clarify that we agreed not to have a sign-up list for comment during the last one, so that I just want to, I know you wanted, we're not gonna do the sign-up list, so it would be a still comment you are, so again.
Why don't we try it the way that it is, and I guess to be, if someone is, let's sort of agree to say maybe 3 minutes, and if somebody's really long-winded, then we go back and make a motion that it only can be 3 minutes. I mean, most of these people, they get up, they ask their question, they sit back down, they want an answer. Nobody usually talks more than 3 minutes when they say something. There's very few people that do that.
One thing I do when I'm a moderator for town meetings is I try to call on people that haven't already spoken. So I don't go back, even though somebody raises their hand, if they've already spoken, I'll usually ask, is there anybody else that would like to speak before I call on that person again? To be fair to everybody.
I'll just add, I don't have a preference, I think most people stand at 3 minutes, but if there are long-winded, I do agree that more people should have a chance to talk, and it's hard to set a precedent afterwards without possibly being insulting. For Board of Finance, we typically have a 3-minute limit, and that's kind of the standard in a lot of our town meetings outside of this, is that's just an understanding that 3 minutes.
We don't have a standard at a regular town meeting. You may be talking about a board meeting.
I said Board of Finance.
Yeah, but then you said there's a standard at other town meetings, and that, not, the town meeting, when we have people stand up, there's no limitation on their.
There were limitations at prior Board of Ed meetings.
Right, board meetings.
I was specific about Board of Finance, and Board of Ed, make that be record. So I don't know if you currently have a Board of Ed 3-minute standing, or if you guys even have a standing currently.
I believe we do have a 3-minute standing time limit. And again, that was what we had, what was the original proposal within the protocol. So, you know, I think as with everything else, like, I agree that it's hard to walk a standard back after we've implemented one. So it would be my preference to implement one, but again, the understanding that the purpose of this is to make sure that we're moving discussion along, we're hearing from as many people as possible. If there is an instance where we want, it's something like, we are interested in hearing for somebody for longer than 3 minutes, there's no reason that we couldn't make a motion in the moment to let the person finish speaking, or then have them circle back and come around later on in the conversation to make sure we're hearing from everybody else.
We've also talked about adding in 1 to 2 additional times for just public comment too.
Right.
Which we didn't talk about previously, so
Right, so there will be opportunity, you know, that limitation regarding public comment, I would expect would only be applicable to the meetings where we are conducting business, is not applicable to the public hearing meetings.
To clarify, going back to our conversation about the length of the meetings, is it a target or a hard cutoff?
Right now, we're setting it as a target. And what the way that we,
Target,
the target for the meeting time
Yep.
and
Target
what
for
we
the
agreed about. No, oh, sorry, for the public comment, I thought you meant for the end meeting time.
no, is it a target or hard?
I would like it to be, again, just to set a standard and see how that goes, to start with 3 minutes. Again, if the process is not working, we can revisit that. But it's just a way to help us manage time.
But it's a hard cutoff of 3.
I would be watching it.
I would think if someone's like, you can tell if they're winding down what they're saying, and it goes over like 30 seconds. I
But
don't
that's a
think,
target then, so.
I like the target line.
Yeah.
Somebody can say, hey, just let you know, we're proposing 3 minutes, we're at 3 minutes. It's a polite, because it also can create a lot.
Yeah, I think
when
there's
somebody's
just a
like,
lot of
"3 minutes,
emotional
done."
questions that can come up, and people are very emotional about the topic, and so interrupting someone while they're feeling upset and kind of trying to say that is really challenging from the perspective of me being up here, and that is what I'm trying to make sure that we have guardrails in place to help manage conversations like that, so that we can keep a conversation moving forward, again, particularly when there are meetings in which we need to conduct business, when we have the other opportunities so that people come and address us. Any further discussion on this? We take a vote on the motion to affirm the 3-minute time limit, for
So
public
the
comment.
firm 3 minute time limit is what the motion is.
Yeah, the motion is a 3-minute time limit for public comment. To affirm it, yeah, because it's part of the documentation that we put together, we're just clarifying this because we were inconsistent with it at the last meeting. All those in favor of the 3-minute time limit? Raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed? All right, that was 3 in favor, Mary Beth, Sam Wall, and Kristen, and then 4 opposed, Penny, John Puz, Carrie, and Alicia. So that is where we stand with public comment.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I can I make a motion to have a 3-minute target for public comment?
I would second that. And I think in discussion, I would like add a 3 minute target so that the public knows we have to target 3 minutes for the warning to wrap up at 3 minutes. Hey, can we wrap up here somewhere or something so that it doesn't, you don't want somebody standing for 2 minutes without, and then it does become emotional. If you try to stop something like that. But I would like the target versus a hard,
Yeah.
you're done.
Any further discussion? I question, I need people to help me enforce that.
Yeah, for,
I just,
or a committee. Yeah.
that's,
so by doing that, you'll need to go back to the protocols, or like whatever standard.
that is, I can update the language of the protocol document by this and say that it is a target. If that's what we agreed to, just to amend it for the record. I'm happy to make that change.
In the protocol also, I think you have still, it says in-person comment only, but I thought we made a motion to allow virtual comment as well.
I will go back and double check because I meant to make sure that that was not in the final version of it. That's why everything still has draft, because I knew we wanted to resolve this at this meeting. So I will make sure that that's not in here, not the intention for that. Okay. A vote on John's motion to have a 3-minute limit target for public comment for the meetings moving forward. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that passes. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, well, yeah, I can help. Mary Beth, Sam Wald, Kristen Young, Carrie, and John Puz are in favor. Alicia and Penny are.
We'll ask us to say opposed, then we can raise our hands.
Okay. Yep, if you're okay, please raise your hand.
And Penny.
Penny and Alicia are opposed. Okay. That is the result of the vote. That was the end of our business, so now I will open the floor up for public comment. If you have something to say, I would request that you come forward. If you can form a line, I'm happy to take any questions while they're using my phone. I'm gonna try to go through without the microphone until we need it.
Name the street.
Yeah. I'm sorry you're injured.
Tom Leslie, Niles Road, Newark. Just using as an example, Bakerville. So $13 million to bring all those items to fruition that are on that list. That's to keep it as a school, to bring up to, the maximum using 1 through 4, all of them. But what's the cost to A, do nothing, which is say, no more school, raise it. Or B, no more school, but it has to be a building. So a lot of those items in that list, if you're gonna change this to a rec department or some sort of other building, you still need to do all those upgrades. So there's gotta be another number, because when the public sees $13 million, like, whoo, let's close bigger, we're gonna say $13 million. No, there's all other costs that need to be considered to keep the building A, operable for some fashion, or bulldoze it, and it's just a basic piece of property. But there's cost to bulldoze it because you have asbestos and demo costs. So it's not just a clean $13 million we'll save at closing big, or another school for that matter. But there's other costs to consider. I just want to make sure we're either going to look at those costs in some fashion, or the public needs to know that, when they see the sticker shop of $13 million for this school and $13 million for New Hartford and 10 for Angelini, that you have to do something regardless. I just want to make sure people understand that. And you should look at what those costs are, because it's very important in the decision-making process to know what the cost is going to be regardless of what we have to do. You can't just sit here and do nothing and save $13 million.
Thank you for that. Michelle, can you comment briefly, just like on how you plan to talk about that, or when that would be addressed?
Sure, if there's any options where we decide to close Bakerville, we will incorporate costs to either demolish, or we're supposed to look at options of what it could be.
Mhm.
But essentially with most of the options, you're still gonna have that price tag.
Yes.
The ADA would only go away if it was a private entity, if it's a town building, you still have that
Yeah.
issue.
The other cost, potential change, that will be if you change the square footage of, if you raise a portion of the building,
And we
then.
could explore that too, yeah.
So am I to understand then that when we get to the point in the timeline where we're looking at like our options, when we're looking at the option, we're saying, hey, we would recommend that you reduce or repurpose, something else with Bakerville, then at that time, those costs, like specific to that, could be provided as part of that option?
At least the demolishing,
Yeah,
and if there's, we'll end up applying like generalized renovation costs to any of the buildings.
Okay.
If we're gonna follow like the renovated new, which we'll talk about further, that's gonna be a square foot number that will apply. And these numbers sort of go away because it would encapsulate everything.
Yeah.
If that makes sense?
that makes sense to me.
Pam Columbia, 500 Cedar Lane. Did I catch you correctly said,
Really close to the.
did I catch you correctly saying that if it was a different use for the building, let's say it were to go into private hands for whatever use, ADA requirements go away, even the building official wouldn't require it to be brought up?
Well, it's just less of a federal requirement, so there's less of an issue. You still would have to do things over time, sure, but no one's, I don't know how to explain it that well,
No one's
It's
gonna
not
come yell at you
required.
about it.
What's that?
No one's gonna come yell at you about
but
it.
it's required in federal buildings to continue to keep up with ADA and to bring your buildings up. But a private building is not a federal building, so.
But if it were to become a rest department, it would
It
still
would
be.
still be a town building, it would require it. So like that cost isn't really gonna change. It would probably increase, because you might wanna renovate some rooms for a different use, and really that's gonna start to change things.
Thank you for your question. Yes?
Shelley Williams, Pioneer Drive. With regard to Bakerville School and possible reuse, will there be a cost differential between keeping the building as it is, including modular classrooms, and keeping the building as it is and getting rid of modular classrooms?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the crowd?
I just have a question. Carly Giuliano. With this building being the cheapest to repair, why would we close this one instead of another one?
I'm not saying we're closing this one or
Okay, I
anything.
feel like everybody's always like, big.
No, it's for the least, yes, and that's because the cost to replace it is the least too, because it's the smallest. So it's just really the math. And that metric is used to compare buildings of different sizes really, so that you're really trying to compare apples to apples. So that's all I was trying to do.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to be very, oh, sorry. Okay. You know, the purpose of this is to understand like what all of the options are available. So no one up here is really focused on like one particular thing and one particular school because we don't know. That's why we're doing this. Like we want to make sure that we're understanding. So regardless of the way that people might be phrasing the conversation in comment, like from one person to another in the community, I want to be very clear about the task force. We are looking at all three of the buildings to understand what the best plan is to move forward for like respective, whatever. If we get to the end and it's like, we need to burn Anthony down, I don't think anybody's expecting that, but like, that would be like an option that's like available, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to be very clear that this is an open-minded process to try to make sure that we're understanding the facilities the way they are now, the schools, the programming that we want to provide, how many students we expect to operate, and then again, what the town's responsibilities are regarding all of these facilities, regardless of whether or not they're being used as a school. So there's no intention to like go after one particular school.
If I could just add, the reason why I talk about it is because those temporary classrooms are the weak point in my mind, is they were not meant to be forever. So if you take away 4 classrooms, you're really left with a small school, you know? So that's a problem, right? So we need to address it.
Kirby, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the best way to phrase it. Kirby Randy, 3 Sloan Street. For the items that need to be done here, like a lot of the issues that are in the school they pass every year for, like, because they're grandfathered in, right? So if you were to do some of those items, essentially, would you be able to isolate how much of those are like OSHA issues, where they're like fileable type?
Yeah, to some degree, we do kind of go over that too in the beginning of the report. So as you read the narrative, it kind of describes about code and the final say. It's really not us. We're not the final say. It's your authority having jurisdiction, really. But really, the electrical code is really the only one that you have to do right away.
Yeah, the life safety items, which tend to be electrical, your emergency lighting, your exit signage, your fire alarm system. You know, certainly if there's an unsafe condition like stairs or something that deteriorates, then it probably falls in the same category. It's just not easy.
So would it be fair to say that priorities 1 and 2 would be items that would be potential OSHA compliance issues, and then 3 and 4 might be nice to have, but.
Yeah, that's pretty much the intent. 2s have the ADA too, and you know, you're required to address them. You're not required to do it all at once necessarily, but you're supposed to start to have a plan that addresses them at least, especially if you want to save money.
Okay, and then apologies if I missed this, but what is the ratio for utilization to get that funding federally? Is there like a metric where it's like 70% utilized or 80%, like there's a ratio of how much funding you get?
We haven't gotten to the utilization yet, but the enrollment does affect the rate you'll get.
Is it like a tiered structure, or is it kind of
It's a little hard. So New Hartford has a rate of 44.7, don't quote me on it, something around that. This school is, I think, that it's supposed to be around 11,000 square feet, is what the state would say. So they're only gonna pay that portion. Don't quote me on all the numbers yet. This is rough in my head, I'm just starting that. So really, you're only gonna get, you know, roughly 70% of that 40% for this school. So it's gonna affect your reimbursement rate. And each school is gonna be different because of it. And the enrollment projections could change that, so we're just starting to get into those, and that's what's gonna be presented next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The April meeting.
No, the March.
Okay. Yeah, the new meeting that we just scheduled will be the enrollment projections. Any other,
I just have a question, and I think I'm accurate about this. I believe if you accept money to run your school, you have to keep it as a school for 20 years. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong. Any money you get from the state, it has to be.
Or you have to like pay it back?
Or you have to pay it back.
I'm gonna take a beat. John, are there any questions from the crowd on the internet?
So if you're on the virtual side, please raise your hands and then we'll bring you in to either say your question or type your question.
While we're waiting for hand raises, anybody else who's here in the room?
Christine Mangini, Red Clover Road. My only thing is I want everyone to remember is we put portables on in the past because our enrollment expanded. And throughout, history, enrollment goes up and goes down, goes up and goes down. So I don't want us to make a small school or just a school that fits just enough and there's not room to expand. So I think that's just something important to remember so that we are always thinking of expansion. I know West Road, somebody cleared like 60 acres, it looks like. I don't know what that person's planning to do. Are they planning on building a development there? So I heard something about, you would know, Alicia, maybe more information.
houses growing up last step on.
Sorry, excuse me.
Not Stub Hollow, on West Road.
Right.
I saw like land got totally cleared where that old tree farm was. So what are people's plans? Like, are we understanding what's going on? Like I heard, I don't know, this could be rumor, apartments going up behind Mirandino's. Is that really happening? Like, is our town going to grow in population? So we need to keep that,
Wait, excuse me, sorry, can we just let her finish for a minute?
I'm just saying, this is stuff I've heard, I don't know for real. I'm just saying I've heard things.
That project was stalled due to drainage issues and what the state is mandating that they do. They've been before P and Z, not sure if it's gonna go for, it's just in its infancy. It's been around, but they've been talking about that for probably going on 2 years now, but nothing really has been settled on that.
But at some point, somewhere around in our town, we're a great town. We're known for our schools, we're known for our community, our sense of community. It's growing. And I just want to make sure we keep that in mind. Because yes, maybe enrollment's dipping, but it can grow too.
Thank you for your comment. I think that that's something the town, excuse me, just let me finish and then I'll call on you to have a chance for public comment. I think that what you are raising is something that is for the town to decide, right? Like that is a philosophical conversation that the town will need to weigh in on over time regarding like how they want to approach things and what investments they want to make. That is where we need community stakeholder input in. I can't speak for anybody else on what that looks like, so I appreciate you bringing that up. I want people to be thinking about those kind of things and how they feel about that as they're making some of these decisions. So thank you for raising it. Ma'am, you have a question? I'm sorry? Could you state your name and your address and then speak up a little bit so I could hear you?
Pardon?
Could you state your name and address, please?
My name is Kate Wagner and I'm at Stub Hollow Road.
Thank you. What was your comment?
I want to know where the money is going to come from for all these improvements.
We don't know that at this time. And we don't know how much money it is. We don't know what we're going to be, like what is available for grants. Those conversations will be, again, that information will be coming.
And would you, if their recommendation is to close one of the schools, will you go along with their recommendation?
I don't think we can speak for that right now. What the expectation is that they will present a bunch of options to us, and we as a task force will make a recommendation out of those options, pick one and recommend it to the Board of Ed, who will then take it from there to bring it to the public and have the public weigh in. So there are a lot of opportunities for everybody can hear the same information. We will collectively decide and vote on, what we think is the right option to present to the Board of Education. And then there will be a process there to follow to get the town's buy-in and go forward. So that's the best answer I can give you on that. Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment for now. We've identified some action items. Letter I on the agenda, action steps for the next meeting, the date, location, and time. So now that we've added that new meeting, the next meeting of the task force will be held on March 25th at 7 p.m. at Andy's meeting. We'll be going over the enrollment projections as well as the task force business related to what we want to do from the stakeholder input process. We'll discuss the dates and finalize dates for 2 public hearings in between now and June 10th, so we can get that feedback from people. And then we'll discuss also the sample goals and evaluation criteria that we're going to use. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Great. A motion by John to adjourn the meeting at 9:03, seconded by Sam. All those in favor? Thank you. That was unanimous. Kathleen Hall.